All right, good morning, everyone. I am Pandora White, the CEO of We Represent, and I just want to thank you all for being here this morning. And today we have our keynote speaker, Nathan Bland, who is a very amazing person, and he's going to tell you about his story and his work with as a diplomat-in-residence. And let me just tell you a little bit more about Nathan. So he is a career Foreign Service officer with over 16 years of experience in a wide variety of areas with the U.S. Department of State. He is currently the Diplomat-in-Residence based at Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana, where he is responsible for recruiting the best and brightest candidates from diverse backgrounds within Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas for the U.S. Department of State career and student program opportunities. His previous overseas assignments include a variety of positions in China, the Vatican, Belize, and Mexico. He speaks Mandarin, Italian, and Spanish. Nathan completed executive leadership training from Harvard Business School as part of the Secretary's Leadership Seminar. He graduated from Seton Hall University School of Diplomacy and International Relations with an MA in Diplomacy and International Relations and an MA in Asian Studies. He also holds a BS in Business Administration from Louisiana College. And most importantly, he is our keynote, and I'm so happy that he agreed to come. So I'm going to pass it over to him, and he's going to tell you all about himself. If you have any questions as he's talking, please go ahead and drop those questions in the Q&A. We are going to leave some time at the end so that he can answer all of your questions. All right, Nathan.
Great. Thank you for that introduction, Pandora, and thanks for inviting me to speak so early this morning on a Sunday. I appreciate it. No, I'm really happy though to be here with this group. I heard about this conference by word of mouth after you had the first one, as you know, and I immediately reached out to Pandora to find out more about it because it seems like exactly the kind of conference that we should be engaged in. The State Department, the Diplomats-in-Residence. I know it's funded by state, but also the Diplomats-in-Residence, which is what I am, to be able to tell everybody more about the possible careers that they can have in state and explain it in detail and let you know how to get in touch with us and how to follow up. And so if you want to pursue this kind of career, you can. So as far as who I am, you heard my bio just now. I'm a Foreign Service officer. I've been in since 2006. I started with the State Department in 2004, actually. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to tell you all about my journey from basically birth to the State Department to becoming a diplomat. And then I'll tell you briefly about my journey through the Foreign Service so far. So, and I always say so far because this is not one of those I made it stories. You know, it's not like I'm an ambassador sitting back, looking back at my career and telling you all this is what I did and all these great things. No, this is the story about, you know, the hardships, the struggles, the way to make it through, you know, and dropping little hints and tips along the way, like my learned lessons along the way as well, you know. So feel free to ask me anything about the realities and the practicalities of life as a U.S. diplomat. You know, as I mentioned, I'm going to start from the beginning and then go to getting to the Foreign Service and then through the Foreign Service so far. All right. So to start off, I actually I wasn't joking when I said from birth. I was born overseas, so I was a military brat. My parents were both in the army, so I was born in Germany. Right. But I was raised mostly in a town in Louisiana, small town called Leesville, Louisiana. It's right by a military base called Fort Polk. So from Germany, I was born there. Then around second grade, we came to Louisiana. Then around eighth grade, we moved again to another military base in New York called Fort Drum. And not like New York City, New York, but this is far upstate New York. And then we came back to Leesville, Louisiana around 10th grade. And then I graduated out of high school there. So for me, a job in the Foreign Service, it was kind of like a perfect fit for like a military background. I mean, like one, I already had the international exposure. I was born overseas. My family was a public service family. They were both in the U.S. Army, so part of the Department of Defense. And we moved around, some when I was young. So I knew what it was like to get up and relocate totally, and then get up and do it again, totally. And that's what it's like. So this was a seamless transition, basically. But I lived most of my life, in Leesville. Graduated from there. I went to a private Southern Baptist college in Pineville, Louisiana, called Louisiana College. It was known for its academics, and it was close to home. I wasn't ready to leave home at that point. It was only about an hour from our house, so that's part of why I went there. And then around my junior year, my mom started encouraging me to go study abroad. Like she really wanted me to get out and get international exposure again. I was fine. I was settled. I had my little girlfriend at home. I was planning my life, being in Louisiana, what I was going to do. But she really was kind of pushing that. And so I did, and she hustled to pay for it. I mean, she actually was out there doing the fundraisers in our church, selling raffle tickets and tapping into loans or whatever, and just doing whatever she could, like selling dinners and stuff like that to try to make sure I had enough money to go study abroad. But that opportunity itself actually changed my life. But I went to London and I did one semester there, and it just totally revamped my life. But listen, so that's tip number one. I'm going to tell you my tips along the way, and they're numbered. There's about 10 or so. So tip number one is, which most of you are probably interested in, but do some kind of study abroad, but also check out some of the study abroad programs that we have, that the State Department has, that can help to pay for those study abroad experiences. Like if I knew about the Gilman Scholarship, I probably could have qualified for that when I was an undergrad. My mom wouldn't have had to been doing fundraisers to send me abroad. Um, it would have paid for some of those costs, for most of those costs, most likely. But we have like the Gilman, we have the Boren Fellowship, we have the Critical Language Scholarship, all of that. And I'm sure you probably heard about most of those or all of those during this conference. But look into those. That's tip number one. Check out those student programs early, because you can start applying for them really early, like freshman, sophomore year, junior year. And that's another thing. If you notice, like some of our more advanced fellowships that can actually help to pay for graduate school and gives you a job in the foreign service, like the Pickering and the Wrangle fellowships. Um, if you look at the profiles of the people who get those fellowships, a lot of them have some kind of international exposure or program in the past already. Like they've done the Gilman, or they've been a Fulbright, or they've done a critical language. It's something called scaffolding. Like if you start with something related in this field, and it doesn't even have to be state, but something related with like the international field, doing some kind of study abroad, or an internship or something like that. It helps to build your resume, so when you're applying for some of those bigger fellowships later, you're a more attractive candidate. All right, that's tip number one. Um, so anyway, back to the story. So after I came back from London, though, my little small town in Louisiana was too small for me. I couldn't stay home anymore after that. So I was kind of somewhat depressed that summer when I got back, after having experienced London, and all, we had backpacked through Europe and then come back to Pineville, Louisiana. Um, and then so I was just looking for my next way out, like my next way to get back out and begin my new adventure. And my school actually had another program called the China Challenge Program, where they wanted a few of us. I mean, it was like 6 students. We went out to teach English in a school all the way in the northwest part of China called Xinjiang, which is in the news a lot lately because of how they've treated their Uyghur minorities, their Muslim minorities, now. But this was many years ago. This was 20 years ago, and it was bad then, but it wasn't as bad as it is now. But anyway, so we went out there for like 6 weeks that summer, taught English at a school out there, and the school actually invited me to come back after I graduated undergrad. And I was like, yeah, all right, we'll see about it. But I was like, I'm not going all the way back there. Um, So then I went and I did my last semester of undergrad. I did another study abroad in Hong Kong. That's where I did my final semester of undergrad. And it was there actually that I found out about the Foreign Service. It was just reading in a magazine. It was a magazine called the Black Collegian Magazine, and they had an ad for it. It said, "Be the face of America to the world," and it was like a career in diplomacy. And I was like, wow, I can do that. I was just doing that. I was all the way out in like way in the northwest part of China where they hadn't seen many Americans at all, and definitely not African Americans. So I was the face of African Americans to that part of the world. So I was like, I could do that and get paid doing it too as a career. Definitely. So then I started looking into it, right? And I found out that you have to take a test and everything, and then in my mind, I viewed exploring other cultures and such as a horizontal versus a vertical experience. So like on the horizontal level, it's like when you go out for a week trip to Italy and you tour all the cities and everything. That's like spreading yourself out, expanding your horizons and seeing it, on a horizontal superficial level. The vertical experience to me is like when you actually live in a place for a while, and you get to know their culture, you get to know their languages, their customs, their history. Like you get to experience their traditions, their weddings, their funerals, their food, their music. You breathe that culture. To me, that's the more vertical experience. And I love that. I love having those vertical experiences in countries. And to me, when I looked at the Foreign Service and found out, you're living in a country for 2 to 3 years and stuff, that is the kind of experience I wanted. And to be able to do that, represent your country, and get paid to do so, I was like, that's perfect. That's a really nice type of job. And in the ideals of the State Department, of the Foreign Service, it was that we're the lead foreign affairs agency and we work to shape and sustain a peaceful and prosperous, just and democratic world for the benefit of all American people and people everywhere. So I was like, yes, I am here for it. All of that. That sounds really, really me. So I found out, you have to take the test, the Foreign Service Officer test, and I did it in Hong Kong. While I was out there, I went to the consulate out there. We have a U.S. consulate in Hong Kong, registered to take the test, and I took it there, thinking I was gonna, pass and waltz into the Foreign Service, like, because I thought I was bright and everything, and I was kind of, honors classes and gifted class. I'd never really failed a big test before, but I failed this one. I didn't, I didn't fail, but I didn't pass, right? So, that was kind of shocking to me. But that's actually my tip number two for you guys. If you're interested in doing this, as long as you're 20 years of age and a U.S. citizen, take that test. You can take it as many times as you need to, except you can only take it once a year, and it's offered 3 times a year. But take it. Um, you can study for it, you can prepare for it, and I did somewhat. Then there's 3 different sections. There's English expression, which is like any like the GRE English part of the test or the SAT English part, so you can prepare for that. There's job knowledge, which is a bit more difficult to prepare for because it's like questions that's pulling from history, from business principles, management principles, foreign policy, American ideals and constitution and all of that. So it can be a little bit of everywhere, all over the place type of test part, but you can prepare for it. And then there's the situational judgment, which is where they give you a situation and they ask you what's the best way to approach this. And it's all multiple choice, and then there's an essay portion. But anyway, it's best to go ahead and take it just to see what it's like, because it can take more than one time, as my experience will show you. And most people, no, well, yeah, I would say most people, it takes more than one time. In our last class of new diplomats, only about a quarter of them had passed that test the first time all the way through. So 75% of the class, it took them more than once. All right. So yeah, take it. You have nothing to lose. That's tip number two. So after that, after I got my little letter saying I didn't pass, I was like, okay, so what is plan B? And then plan B became, I remembered that they had invited me to go back to Xinjiang to teach English out there. So I was like, oh, I'll go out there and do that. I liked it out there. So I was like, I'll go out there and do that again. And then initially I was going for 6 months, but then I was learning Chinese, loved the culture, bettering myself while I was out there. So I stayed for another 6 months. So I was there a year, and then another 6 months. So I was there in total about a year and a half. Um, and then while I was out there, though, I was like, I still want to be a diplomat. I had that still in my mind. So I started doing research about how do you become a diplomat? Like what schools have like teach you to be a diplomat or whatever. And I found a few programs. One of them was Seton Hall in New Jersey. They have a School of Diplomacy and International Relations. It's a good school. I'm not trying to push one school over another, but there's plenty of schools out there that have foreign policy programs, including like Georgetown and SAIS and all, loads of them. But I did that one. And while I was doing the research, I found out about like the Pickering and Wrangle fellowships that will pay for graduate school. But I found out about it like a week before the applications were due, and I was way out in Xinjiang, so I had no way of meeting that deadline. However, if I had known about it in advance, I definitely would have applied to those. So that's my tip number 3. Check out, if you're interested in graduate school, check out those programs, the Pickering and the Wrangle programs. What they do is they pay for 2 years of graduate school, and they give you 2 paid internships, one domestic after your first year of school, and one abroad at one of our embassies or consulates after your second year of school. And most importantly is it brings you directly into the foreign service as a foreign service generalist. So you have a guaranteed job after grad school. So you're not fretting about what am I going to do after grad school. You have a career path lined up. That isn't, those are excellent, excellent programs. And there's another one for computer science related majors called the FATE, the Foreign Affairs Information Technology Fellowship. It does a similar thing. It can pay for 2 years of grad school, the 2 paid internships, and a guaranteed job as a Foreign Service Information Management Specialist. But you can also apply as a sophomore. So you can apply as a sophomore and get 2 years of undergrad paid for, your junior and senior year paid for, the 2 internships and a guaranteed job at the end. For the graduate school fellowships, though, you can apply either as a senior in undergrad or the year before you plan on attending grad school. So even if you've been out of school for 2, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, as long as you're planning on attending grad school the following year, you can still apply. All right. So that's tip number 3. Check out those graduate school fellowships. Then I went to Seton Hall, for grad school. I did a dual MA program, diplomacy. I did a master's in diplomacy and international relations and a master's in Asian studies. And then during my first year of grad school, they had a required internship component to our grad degree. So I did an internship at the Department of State, an unpaid internship. And to me, I think that may have been the most crucial step in this whole journey so far. And so that's my tip number 4. Student programs are a great way to get your foot in the door at the Department of State. The unpaid internships, which may be changing, and I'll tell you why in a second. So the unpaid internships, you could apply from a junior all the way to grad school. We have those. We have something called the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program, which you can apply as a sophomore or a junior. And that one gives you 2 paid internships, one domestic and one abroad, in summers, consecutive summers. And you apply for that in around August. It opens, I believe. Most of these will open in the fall, open and close in the early fall between like August to October. Of course, I told you about the FATE. There's one called the Wrangle Summer Enrichment Program that sends you to Howard for the summer, and you take some courses, like 2 courses, one on writing and one on U.S. foreign policy and such, and you get to meet a lot of the people in this sphere. And then, of course, we have our pathways internships, there's 3 pathways. These bring you into civil service, which is domestic jobs. There's the internship program, pathways internship. There's the recent, and there's the presidential management fellowship, which is for grad students. So we have lots of student programs. Look into them. Our website is careers.state.gov, and it has all of that there. Careers.state.gov. So, oh, I was going to tell you about the unpaid internships that may be changing. So there's a bill before Congress now, um, where they're trying to make sure that all of states' programs, all of our internship programs are going to become paid because they know it's a big obstacle for people to do an unpaid internship for a whole summer. It can pose a barrier. And it is a big barrier. Like I was able to do it because I had a godfather who lived in the DC area. So I had a place to lay my head each night, like he let me stay there and I commuted into DC and work. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to do that unpaid internship. It would have been impossible. So they're looking at changing those. Anyway, so some of the benefits of the student programs, though, especially like an internship, one, it gets your foot in the door. You get your badge, you get security clearance, so you're in, and you're working among people. So two, it lets you also see that you can do the same work that other people around you are doing. It gives you that confidence to know that you're on that same level with the peers around you. It's not some mystery about, oh, these diplomats over there are just so smart or whatever, and I just wish I could work with them. No, you can do the same work that we can do, and you'll see that. And then three, networking. It allows you to meet other people, and I know networking, to me, it has like a bad connotation, right? Like it sounds like networking means you want to meet people just to get something from them, but to me it comes kind of natural. I just like meeting people, and it's not like I'm thinking about where they can take me, but just to meet them. Like being from the South, I think that's something that we have innately, and it's like we want to say hello to people. You want to smile, you want to be warm towards people. Whereas in the Northeast, that may not be the most common thing that you'll find. So it kind of makes you a little different in that aspect. But I remember when I was an intern, I was sitting there having lunch in the cafeteria. We were at the Foreign Service Institute, which is where we get our language training and our professional studies training and all. So I was having lunch with another intern, and then at the end of the table, there was another lady who was sitting there eating lunch by herself. So we were having this conversation, me and this intern, and I was like, nobody really wants to eat lunch by themselves. So then I kind of like just pulled her into the conversation, like just naturally, was asking how she was doing and everything. And then we started having the conversation together. And then come to find out, like this lady was the deputy assistant secretary for all of human resources. And she asked me to come to her office after that, just to stop by and meet her and have a more of a conversation about my interests and such. And so I did. I went. I didn't think much of it, but and I had no idea what, as a young college intern, I had no idea what her position meant or whatever. But I went and we had a conversation. She was like, you know what? I want you to meet some other people. And so she knew I was from Louisiana. So she introduced me to a lady named Miss Linda Thomas Greenfield, who is also from Louisiana, an African American woman from Louisiana. She was like, y'all have a lot in common. So I want you to meet her. And I don't know if you've heard that name recently, but now Miss Linda is the U.S. UN ambassador. Like she's the United States ambassador to the United Nations, which is a cabinet level position under President Biden. From Baker, Louisiana. And she, um, you know, eh, we met, we connected back then when I was an intern. But then after I entered the State Department, like she shepherded me throughout my career. She served as a mentor for me. So the point is that the internships can help you to meet people, and those people can actually help to bring you places. And my tip number 5 is everybody loves an intern. Like, and I think this applies to most organizations. I think you can use your status as an intern to go and speak to some of the most senior level people in that company, just to say, "Hey, I just want to know if we can have an information session so I can learn more about your career and things in this company and all." And I think most people will accept that. So anyway, after that internship, I went back to grad school, of course, and I took the Foreign Service Officer test again. That was my second time taking it. I passed one part of it, and I didn't pass the other part. So still that's another year you got to wait, because you only take it once a year, so you got to take it another year. So then my second year of grad school, then I was like the president of the graduate diplomacy like the student government association of our school. I was active on campus. I was a GA, a graduate assistant, and that's my tip number 6. Be a student leader, get involved, do activities on campus. It helps to demonstrate certain skills that are needed to be a diplomat, and that you can draw on some of those activities and those stories to explain yourself later. Um, and then I was also in touch with like my deans at the school about my goals and my ambitions. Letting them know that I wanted to join state and all. And that's my tip number 7. Let people know your goals. Like let your faculty and your administration know who you are and your ambitions, because you never know what opportunities might pop up. And when those opportunities pop up, if they know that you're interested in that, then they can let you know. If they don't know, then they can't, right? So one of my deans actually told me about the Presidential Management Fellowship, which is one of those pathways programs. So when I was graduating grad school, I applied for that, the Presidential Management Fellowship. I applied for the Boren Fellowship. I took the Foreign Service Officer test again. I think I applied for another internship. I just knew that I needed something to do after grad school. I needed something gainful to do. Like I was about to be out there with student debt and everything. So I applied widely, right? And that's my tip number 8 for you. Apply widely when you're graduating and you're looking for things to do, because it's better to have options than to like have all your eggs in one or two baskets. And if something doesn't go through, you know, it's just tough at that point. So make sure you have a lot of different you cast a wide net, right? So when I was graduating, I was actually offered the PMF, the Presidential Management Fellowship. I was offered a Boren Fellowship to go study Chinese in Xinjiang again, actually. I was offered the no, I passed the Foreign Service Officer test this time, like the first part of it, but then there's a the oral assessment later, you know. And I didn't get offered like the internship that I had applied for or whatever, and something else I applied and I didn't get it. But I had 3 options, right? You'll have some rejections, but if you apply widely, you should have like 1 to 2 to 3 options. I took the PMF, the Presidential Management Fellowship. It's a 2-year prestigious type of fellowship program in the civil service side of the government. And a lot of people, when they become PMFs, they want to go to state, which I did too. But when I applied for the State Department, I was able to write to some of those people who I had met during my internship, and based on my connections from that period, they were able to get me a job back at state as a PMF. So I went to the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs, and my boss actually told me when he hired me, like I didn't know him at all, but he was like, you come really highly recommended. And I didn't know, but I was flattered, but I had no idea. But I think it goes back to that the internship. Um, and then like as a PMF, it's a 2-year program. You get to do rotations and all. I did my rotation out to the embassy in the Philippines, the embassy Manila in the public affairs section there. And then during my first year, I came back. I took the Foreign Service oral assessment, passed that. And then like the following January, that's when I joined the Foreign Service. So I left the PMF program early. It's a 2-year program, but I left after like a year and a half, and I joined the Foreign Service. And that's my journey to the Foreign Service, right? As I mentioned, I know we only got like 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna take you quickly, like within 7 minutes, through my career so far. So I joined as a management cone officer. We have 5 different career tracks as Foreign Service generalists: management, public diplomacy, consular, political, and economic. I joined as management, but I haven't had a typical career at all. Like I've done all of the cones. right? So I started off in China. Like they sent me to China for my first tour, 2 years there. It was a consular job. Everybody has to do a consular job within their first two assignments. Consular work is like doing visas and American citizen services. Before I went to China, they gave me 10 months of Chinese language training. Like, so I came in speaking some Chinese because I had some, from before. But they wanted me to be able to speak about like human rights and trafficking in persons, nuclear proliferation, things I can't even say really in English, but they wanted me to speak about that in Chinese instead of my little street Chinese, right? So they gave me that extra language training to get my professional speaking level up. So consular work is visa work where you're sitting there at the window doing visas, like and interviewing people who want to come to the United States to see if they're eligible for a visa. And American Citizen Services work is like taking care of American citizens in your district. So taking care of them whenever they need assistance. So like issuing passports, or if somebody goes to jail, making sure that they're being treated fairly, or if somebody dies overseas, then you're the one who handles that. You have to notify the next of kin back in the States and tries to get the remains back. You deal with any kind of American citizen assistance needs over there. So after those 2 years, I went to the Vatican. We have an embassy to the Holy See in Rome, to the center of the Catholic Church, right? And then I did 2 years there. I was in the public affairs position there. So when I was in China, that was like a hardship post, right? I wasn't in like Shanghai or Hong Kong. I was in Shenyang in the northeast part. So it had like a high percentage, 30% hardship differential. So then I used that to get a really good post for my second one. So I started from the bottom, like in China, and then I landed in Rome, and I'm like, now I'm here, right? I'm really doing this. So I did that public affairs position, partially because you remember I was a PMF and I was doing public affairs before I joined the Foreign Service. So I was able to use that to do this position. What public affairs officers do, we are the ones who deal with the press, main points of contact with the press. We're the spokespeople for the embassy. You can speak on the record, to journalists. And so everything dealing with the press, but also cultural affairs. So also trying to showcase U.S. culture and values overseas. So like if say you're the public affairs officer in Mongolia and you want to bring over like a jazz band from New Orleans to show Mongolians what authentic US jazz sounds like, that's public affairs. So I did that for like 2 years. Then I went to back to DC for another 2-year assignment in the Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs, which dealt with marine environmental protection issues. So I was the head of the US delegations to these international treaties that dealt with protecting our oceans and environmental issues. It was a job. It was probably my favorite job so far in the Foreign Service, to be honest with you. A job where I was working on issues related to the common good, issues that affected everybody. So that was awesome, and that actually falls under the economic cone. So I did consular, then I did public diplomacy, then that is more economic. Then I went and took the econ. We have an economic course, a year-long course at Foreign Service Institute. And then I went out to Belize, our embassy in Belmopan, Belize. And there I was the head of the political and economic section. I was the Paul Econ section chief. And what political and economic officers do is we are the ones who are out there making connections in the community. You're trying to cultivate contacts with a wide range of society. So government contacts, non-government officials, academia, religious officials, business community, international organizations. You're the one out there schmoozing with people, trying to make good contacts and learning as much as possible about your portfolio, right? And you're writing reports back to Washington to explain what's going on in that country from your angle. So if you're a political officer, you're doing the political issues. If you're an economic officer, you're explaining the economic issues there in the country. And while I was there, I was also the acting deputy chief of mission for my last year there, meaning the ambassador is called the chief of mission, right? And the person under him is called the deputy chief of mission. While I was there, they had an election, and so the president changed from President Obama to President Trump. So the ambassador was called back. So our deputy chief of mission rose to become the charge d'affaires, and she asked me to be her acting deputy chief of mission. So I was doing that position for about a year. Then I went to Mexico City for 3. So I was in Belize for 3 years. Then Mexico City was another 2.5 years. First, they gave me 6 months of Spanish, then 2 years on the job, where I was in the management section. So now you see I've done the counselor, the public affairs, economic, political, and this was finally doing the management homework. And management jobs are focused on the internal operations of the embassy, trying to make sure that things run well inside. So I was responsible for doing contracting and procurement, for like managing all of the purchases of the whole embassy, and I was responsible for managing the logistics of VIP visits. Whenever anybody, like when the vice president came, I had to work with his team to make sure that all of the logistics of the trip were running smoothly. So that's what I did in Mexico City. And then last year, I actually had a chance to go out to Honiara. I was asked by the Bureau of East Asia and Pacific Affairs to go out to Honiara to kind of be like our man in Honiara. And you may be asking yourself, like I did, where on earth is Honiara? And where it is in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So it's a part of it's the capital of and we don't even have an embassy there. But I went out there, because I had all of the different pieces, all of the different combs and experience and stuff. And I went out there and I was our man in Solomon Islands for about a good month and so. And then COVID hit. So I came back. And now I'm in this assignment as the Diplomat-in-Residence for this region doing the recruiting. So I'm responsible for Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. If you're interested in talking to your Diplomat-in-Residence, go onto careers.state.gov, and there's a little link that says connect. And then you look at a map and you find out where you are in the states, and you click there, and then you'll find your Diplomat-in-Residence, and you'll be able to connect with them, just as you'll be able to connect with me. My email address is Diplomat-in-Residence. So it's DIR Central South at state.gov. Okay. And then finally, my last tip number 10. And I think I skipped one. So my tip number 9 was that it's good to have languages coming in, but you don't have to, because we get language training as we go on. So I got trained in Chinese, I got trained in Italian, and I got trained in Spanish. So it's good to have it coming in. It helps your candidacy, but you don't have to. Tip number 10, though, is to be flexible and adaptable. I mean, you move, you travel, you go from place to place to place. You never know where this career will take you, but it's an awesome adventure. And that is my story with loads of information.
All right. Yeah. All right, trying to see if I got an echo. Okay, so it was really great listening to your story and just hearing all of your adventures in this path. I do have a question for you, and it is, how did you not get discouraged? So you said you failed the foreign service test numerous times.
Wait, hold on. I said not passed.
I mean, well, you said you failed it, and then you partially passed it, and then you finally got the oral and then the written. So how did you still feel like, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to just wait another year and try it again? Yeah.
I always tell people to think of the foreign service as plan B, until it becomes plan A. So it's not like I was sitting here only taking the test and then waiting a year. Like you always have to have something else going on. And then if this comes through, whenever it comes through, then, if the timing is right for you, switch over and do that. But I knew I wanted to, at least join the State Department. So you saw, like, the first time I took it, I was in undergrad, right? And then I didn't really have a plan A after that. I just thought I was going to go. Taught English for a while, and I was like, I want to go to school. So I took it again while I was in school, knowing full and well that even if I can't join, but if you pass while you're in school, you can defer. Like if they call you, you can defer 2 times, and it takes time anyway. Like it would take a solid year about from the time you officer test until the time they offer you a job. It can take 9 to 12 months. So it's something that like just to do in the background. And I just kept doing it, knowing that I was making progress. Like one time I didn't pass at all, but it wasn't by that. The second time I passed one part, I missed the second part, and then got right back up and did it again. There are people 9 to 10 times and pass it, but you still have to have something else going on in your life. You can't be just focused on this. Either you're in school or you're working or you're doing something else, and then this is on the side.
All right. So next question is, and I think we talked about this, me and you, before. Sometimes when you go abroad, you find yourself in these spaces where you might be the only one representing your region or the only one that looks like you. How do you navigate those spaces?
Yeah, and that happens often in the Foreign Service. We have, I think maybe the stats are that 6% of the Foreign Service may be African American, which in raw numbers, it's a good bit of African American officers, but we have like 270 something posts overseas, and so it's not that often that you'll get to serve with another person who looks like you. There's often times that I'm the only face that looks like mine in the board meeting or the country team meeting or whatever meeting, but honestly, like a lot of it comes from leadership and from your own personality, like being able to just make sure that everybody knows that you're on top of your game as well as everybody else. That people, especially in the Foreign Service, like it feels like people have a healthy respect for diversity and inclusion. And your voice is necessary to be there, and your voice and your presence is actually sometimes even far more beneficial than others. When I was in Belize, it was far easier for me to integrate in that community. It's like a Caribbean type of community. I don't know if you know Belize. It's a Caribbean nation. And it was far easier there than others, and to understand that society better. And so sometimes your presence and your voice is actually quite valuable, and you have to understand that, and people will respect that.
All right. Thank you so much for being here, talking about yourself and answering these questions. Um, and so I think bringing up diversity and inclusion and equity is a good segue. So our next panel is actually on diversity, inclusion, and equity resources abroad. And so we will have some speakers from the Fulbright to talk about resources that are available when you go abroad, as well as the study abroad program, ISO. So see you all in the next section. All right.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.